Thought I'd make a video talking about some of the recent events with regards to the Chinese hacking of the US telecom network. So, the FBI recently dropped a disclaimer, a warning that Americans should, quote, secure their text messages and also to be using some other form of two-factor authentication that's not text-based. Now, why is this? And how does it relate to the video title? I believe I'm going to title it something like, "The FBI tells us shit that we knew 8 fucking years ago," because that's more, accurate of a description of the situation from my perspective anyway. As someone who not only has been a recent victim of a phishing attempt, I should say attempt, because while they got some level of access, they didn't manage to take my shit over entirely because I was able to kick them out and recover my shit. And part of the reason for that is because of this wonderful little tool. I'm not getting paid to sponsor this or anything, but this little guy right here literally saved my ass. If I didn't have this shit and I experienced that attempt, I wouldn't have been able to get back in. And I would have probably figured out the fastest way to fucking kill myself, because that shit would have been bad. That shit would have been absolutely tragic. And I'm really embarrassed that I let it get that far to begin with. So you really have to take this security shit seriously. It's one thing to go out there and play being a hacker. The GitHub thing got fucking noticed by so many different tech outlets. I've been called an expert, a white hat hacker, security researcher, etc. And I have real experience with what happens during a phish now. Why not use text-based two-factor, right? First of all, let's watch this little video about what the FBI is telling us.
Two-factor authentication code texted to us by our banks or your social media accounts. Well, now the FBI is urging Apple and Android users to stop after revealing a telecom breach may expose these messages to hackers. News Nation's Ryan Bass joining us live to explain further on this. So, Ryan, what are officials recommending we do instead to protect our online accounts? Because surely it can't be we got to just stop texting, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's using more secure ways like passbooks, basically, or password protected management software to access this. They say those text codes that you're getting are not safe. They said this cybersecurity breach could lead to folks spying on your messages and then utilizing those codes to get into things like your banking software or your.
Since y'all can't read the full title, Feds stop two-factor text authentication.
Your social media accounts. That is the concern that the feds have here. And this was called one of the biggest cybersecurity breaches in our nation's history. And it has a lot of folks concerned. And so earlier this month, government officials said that people should start using these encrypted apps like WhatsApp in order to keep your messages safe and make sure that people aren't spying on them. The U.S. government said China hacked AT&T, Verizon, and Lumen Technologies to spy on customers. Now,
I just want to kind of like segue for a moment. Like, you remember when Snowden dropped his shit in like 2013? We found out that there were these surveillance programs that were collecting metadata on virtually every communication ever performed in the United States. Back then, there was a really big suggestion that, and I certainly still believe this is true, that there's some handshaking done between a company like Facebook or Twitter and the government, right? If the government wants to, like, say, look at your Facebook messages, all they have to do is kind of like go to Mark Zuckerberg and be like, yo, we need this shit, give it to us. And they have to. If you remember a company called LavaBit, it was a predecessor to Proton Mail. They were operating within US jurisdiction. The government came in and was like, give us your shit. And they were like, no. And they were like, you're shut down. And they're like, okay. In the privacy game, like having control over your transmission, your information, it's very critical. And if the government or some other third party entity is able to like just look at your shit, that's not secure. What they're urging people to do now is use these, like as an example, instead of receiving your two-factor through text, because if someone's able to look at that text and they're able to have effectively intercepted your two-factor code, then they can get into whatever account it is that you're trying to log into. So
the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency sent out an updated memo 2 days ago, warning people that texts aren't encrypted, basically saying that these passcodes that you're getting sent to your phone are old school and not very secure. They say
That's correct. And for a lot of reasons. So texts are transmitted in plain text and can be just intercepted by fucking anybody. So anyone with a radio signal, like a fucking Stingray. Stingray is like it's almost like a portable radio tower that cops often use and can drive around like in their trunk or whatever and be able to just grab shit out of the air, right? And you got countless text messages flying around, hitting towers and shit, and they could just grab all of them at any given moment wherever they're at if they have a strong enough signal, or just grab the ones in their local area. And then all of a sudden they've got your two factors if you're using text.
That you should use authenticator apps for logging on. So how do we protect ourselves? Like, what are hackers doing to get a hold of your info? Well, I actually had a chance to speak with coding and securities expert Yashin Menraj, who said we need to be extra cautious ourselves with what's being texted to our phone to make sure we aren't voluntarily giving up our sensitive information.
Exactly. So I say that the FBI tells us shit that we knew about like 8 years ago, because over here we got this article from 2016 by Schneier on security, who, if you're not aware of who Bruce Schneier is, he's like basically a widely recognized security expert who writes about these topics very regularly. Countless blogs to be gone through on his stuff. Very good material, can recommend. I know about this personally because at the time in 2016, I was working as a security consultant for a company and was required to be familiar with the document NIST 853, I believe. Was it 853? Let me just double check. I had to be familiar with this document. Control baselines for information systems and organizations. The way that they do this top-down security shit at the government is fucking crazy. They have all of this documentation written in like normie speak, incredibly pedantic, like hitting every possible angle that you could think about when it comes to how something is supposed to work, right? Which is really good in terms of like actually describing how a program or a piece of software should actually operate. There's this idea of how the thing should work, how it currently works, and then you have the perspective of the person who wrote the software, the group that wrote the software, and then the outside group doing the penetration testing, right? And you have all these different angles in order to look for a possible way to break the system, right? Or achieve some level of privileged access, being able to do something in the program that the program was not initially designed to do, right? You have all these different angles that you're looking at when you're attacking software. Somehow the Chinese government got into, I don't know that it was the Chinese guy, I just know it was a Chinese hack. Why couldn't it be the government, right? Why doesn't the US like sponsor more like independent hacking groups, right? Like, you got a lot of this over in state-sponsored threat actors like over in Russia, and I'm pretty sure same thing in China too, right? Like, why doesn't the US like sponsor random like hacking groups in the US to do like stuff against foreign countries? Because I think that would be kind of a cool elevation in the war game aspect of the cyber Cold War. NIST no longer recommending two-factor authentication back in 2016. Right? How is it that like this much later, there's still companies out there that are actively using text-based two-factor authentication for their shit, like even offering it as an option, right? Like, I totally get fail-safes, I totally get backups, and like, what if something goes wrong and but the situation now clearly demonstrates why these systems need to be upgraded and why users should avoid them to begin with. I can't think of any piece of software, though I'm sure that I am using something that still like uses text-based two-factor, or I'm put in a position where I have to use it. If at all possible, for the situations where you can, it should be avoided. You shouldn't be using it anymore. If anything, you should be using a two-factor authentication application that stores your tokens and generates them securely in a loop. Part of my whole approach for understanding the strength and security of two-factor is to try and find ways to bypass it, because what a lot of these phishers are doing is simply just trying to jack your two-factor tokens, right? Me as a super hacker, or a wannabe super hacker anyway, thinks in terms of, well, how is the software that the two-factor token generator works to begin with? How does those tokens, like, can I generate those tokens myself? And I'm pretty sure that you can, because when you first set up the two-factor, normally what you do is you scan a QR code, right? You scan something that contains effectively your, I believe it's two pieces. It's like a public token and a secret token. And together with these two things, you can generate a time-based two-factor authentication token, the TOTP, I believe it's called. My whole approach is, if I get a library that allows me to do this, and I understand which libraries are used by, like, for instance, Authy and Google Authenticator, and I don't know if there's any other ones. I don't know if Apple has their own where you can, like, store them, like, on your iPhone securely or what exactly. But and I should actually check with some iPhone people to see if they have an answer for this. I don't have an iPhone at the moment. So another reason that I survived the phishing attempt is because I was not using Google Authenticator. It was actually because I was using a completely separate authenticator that a lot more damage was mitigated as a result of me just having, done that basic step to begin with. By having the YubiKey, I was able to get back into my major primary account, and by not using Google Authenticator, I was able to prevent them from doing damage to another account. So that was a win, and that was a win because I was not thinking right that day. And these systems need to be in place because humans are not fail-safe, right? They're not perfect. You could find exactly what happened to me. You could find yourself being really stupid one day for any reason. It doesn't matter, like, what the actual reason is. NIST deprecated this shit a while ago. This is like a big story that's been popping up in the last few days. NPR, Forbes, New York Post, News Nation. Like, it's becoming a big thing. And at the same time, it's becoming a big thing. But 8 years ago, the NIST, another government organization, I think, National Institute on Science and Technology, kind of paid me indirectly back when I was working as a researcher in university. Dude be like, SMS should have been removed a long time ago, considering the SS7 problems. Better to use a secure token. I'm not sure what the SS7 problems are, but this post was made over 8 years ago, August 3rd, 2016. This Forbes article is December 18th, 2024. Is the NIST a government institution? National Institute of Standards and Technology. Okay, I was off on the definition. Is an agency of the United States Department of Commerce. It is a government agency. This is not a new warning. This is a redeclaration of an old warning. I just caught Forbes fucking up. Zach Knopfman, contributor, writes about security, surveillance, and privacy. Do you mention anything about the 2016 declaration? Am I doing your job for you, Zach Knopfman? You've been writing for Forbes since 2018. So the declaration that I know about is actually older than the amount of time you've been working for Forbes. So I don't know what you were doing before that, but it's long been decried as an insecure form. This is a post from February 29th of this year on TechCrunch. So he's citing Zach Whitaker. Does Zach mention 2016? No. Neither Zach nor this other guy mention the fact that, so he's a security editor at TechCrunch, yet nobody's mentioning the Schneier article. I mean, it's not even an article. It's just, like this is the whole thing. Out of band verification using SMS is deprecated and will no longer be allowed in future releases of this guidance. Its latest draft right here. This document. So if we search through this document so here's authenticator threats, right? through social engineering. This is what happened to me. Kind of, not really. Yeah, see, one of these happened to me, but the one that they're talking about with text, an out-of-band secret sent via SMS is received by an attacker who has convinced the mobile operator to redirect the victim's mobile phone to the attacker. So this one is SIM swapping. So one reason two-factor via text would be considered insecure. I talked about stingrays earlier. Another attack vector that they describe here is what if someone's able to SIM swap your phone? I might be getting a little bit out of my depth, but to my knowledge, a SIM swapping attack occurs if someone is able to, because let's say you get a new phone, right? Let's talk about like how getting a new SIM works in general, or like getting, moving your phone number from an old phone to a new phone. The good fortune of having two phones that have removable SIMs, you can just remove the SIM in one and put it in the other, and you're good to go. The other situation would be like, let's say you have two phones, you have non-removable SIMs that are like soldered onto the board. If you want to move your number from one phone to another, in that case, you have to actually contact your phone company, call somebody and fucking say, please transfer my number. Or if you're in the good fortune of having some sort of automated online system where you can do, I haven't used one yet. I think maybe Ting allowed me to do that or something. I don't know exactly. It's been a long time since I've had to do that, because every phone I've been using for a while has been removable SIM. The big deal there is if someone's able to trick a phone company or like call up the phone company and convince them that they are you, and that they got a new phone and they want to move their old number, i.e. your current number, to their phone, and actually successfully get through that process, then any sort of two factors that you might receive when you go to try and log into a website will get received by the attacker, and then you're fucked. That's yet another reason why text-based two-factor is not secure. So we talked about plain text interception, right? We talked about redirection via SIM swapping. Or if there's some way for them to receive the text some other way, either because they found another vector into your phone and they're able to like take screenshots of your two-factor codes when they show up, or there could be a number of different things, right? I think that's it. So FBI tells us some shit that we already knew. They ain't telling us anything new. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, watch all of my other content, share, etc. Hail Satan. Take it easy.